the king who ate his servants during a siege. They pledged to serve him, but he took that vow literally. Winter in the year 1349 was not just a season. The wind howled like wolves across the barren mountains, and snow fell so thick it buried entire villages. Inside the stone keep of Castle Greystone, King Alaric IV sat on a cold throne, cloaked in furs, staring into the dying embers of a once roaring hearth. Outside, his kingdom was being strangled. Inside, something far worse was brewing. The siege had begun 4 months earlier. Enemy forces surrounded the castle, cutting off all escape, all supply lines, and all hope. They didn't need to breach the walls. Time and starvation would do the work for them. The king, however, did not fear. He had survived worse. Or so he thought. At first, there was resolve. Then came rationing. Flour turned to dust. Wine turned to vinegar. Meat became a memory. Horses were eaten. Dogs disappeared. Candles were boiled into wax soup. Leather belts were chewed like jerky. And still, the hunger grew. The servants whispered. The guards grew pale. But the king... remained fed. Every evening, the castle's great hall stayed dark, except for a single table where King Alaric dined alone. The doors were locked. The smells were strange, meaty, rich, and somehow wrong. Then the disappearances began. First, the kitchen boys, then 2 scullery maids, the blacksmith's apprentice, the jester. Each time, the king's steward declared they had fled into the snow, deserted their posts. Cowards. But no tracks were ever found outside. No bodies, no blood, only silence. And dinner. One guard, driven by suspicion, peered through a crack in the door. What he saw made his knees buckle. The king, knife in hand, was carving into a leg. A human leg. Roasted, seasoned, presented like a feast. The guard told no one, because the next day, the steward served meat stew for lunch, and he recognized the taste. The castle transformed. Not physically but spiritually. The tapestries seemed darker. The torches burned colder. The throne room reeked of cooked fat, and the king grew stronger. While everyone else withered, the royal physician was summoned to examine his majesty. He entered the great hall after one such dinner. He exited, pale, silent, trembling. 3 days later, he hung himself from the rafters of the chapel, leaving behind only 2 words scratched into the wall. He feeds. By the 6th month, only a few dozen souls remained in the castle. Most were either dead, missing, or hiding. No one dared speak. The guards no longer knocked on the king's door. They left his meals. What little remained outside his chambers, but they always vanished, replaced by bloodied bones by morning. And then the siege ended. The enemy, convinced that starvation had claimed the garrison, relief forces arrived a week later, expecting to find a graveyard. Instead, they found something worse. The castle was silent, not in the way of death, but in the way of something holding its breath. They entered the grand hall. At the end of the long, empty table sat King Alaric IV, alive, smiling. He was surrounded by scraps of clothing, bones stripped of meat, and a goblet filled with thick, black wine. He welcomed them with open arms. Behind him, the hearth roared, with a fire fueled not by wood, but by broken chairs and shattered shields. When asked where his court had gone, he simply said, "They served me, as they swore they would." The king was taken quietly, secretly, to a monastery far in the north. The official story said he had gone mad from grief, but those who transported him told other tales that he would wake in the night, licking his fingers, that he mumbled recipes in his sleep, that the smell of roasted flesh followed him like a shadow. He died 6 months later, starved. not for lack of food, but because the monks refused to serve meat. When they found his body, his lips were chewed bloody. 2 fingers were missing bitten off. His final act was devouring himself. In time, the castle was abandoned, but stories lingered. Locals claimed that in the dead of winter, strange smoke still rose from its chimneys, that you could hear laughter from the great hall, and that if you stepped too close, you'd smell roasting meat heaven, though no one lived within miles. Some say the king still walks the halls, knife in hand, forever hungry, forever waiting, because kings may die, but appetites like his do not. So the next time you feel hunger gnawing at your bones, ask yourself, would you eat the people who served you? Alaric did, and in doing so, he ensured that his hunger would live forever.